So I wanted to quickly go over the IndyCar practice week for the Indy 500, a week that was just building and building on stories, especially heading into qualifying weekend, which in itself created many storylines heading into the Indy 500 week for race week. Quickly going over practice a little bit, I felt like overall we had some pretty chaotic practice sessions, but a lot that kind of taught us a little bit in terms of what we were going to see from this race. Early on, it looked like it was going to be a big Penske versus Ganassi, how we normally see things every single year for the Indy 500. But other than that, some interesting stories I feel like developed. At the beginning of the week, we did not see Prema until very late on the first practice day. Myself, I felt like that wasn't a very good sign for the team overall. I was like, oh damn, this team is really going to struggle. I mean, they're not getting these things out until way late into the day, and that was after like a 2.5 hour rain delay. But we were all very wrong about that. But yeah, no, Prema has just impressed this week after looking like it may be disastrous at the start to just come in, first year in IndyCar, first time at the Indy 500, especially getting Robert Schwartzman on pole, as we're going to talk about later. Just what that team has been able to create in such a short amount of time is just amazing, honestly, and one of the best stories I think we've seen in years. But with the added weight and the hybrid added on, it was going to be interesting seeing how the drivers were going to utilize that. We saw some different strategies, the drivers kind of using this trickle method during their quali sims, some guys using it on the very last lap in kind of an all-out attempt. So it was going to be interesting to see how you used it over the qualifying stretch for the 4 laps, especially with the tires wearing down, especially as you got to lap number 3 and number 4 of your run. It was interesting seeing how they were using the hybrid. But overall, I felt like it was decent for what we were expecting. A lot of people worried if the racing was going to be lowered a little bit in terms of the standard that we see for the Indy 500. I felt like we saw similar speeds. Guys were going fast as hell, especially as we had the added boost on to the end of the week. We had some crazy wrecks as well. Kempin Simpson had a nasty wreck flipping over. Thankfully, he's okay. Scott McLaughlin in practice right before qualifying had a really rough crash. Sucked for him. That car was looking really good and really fast. Kyle Larson had a slight crash, hit the wall again. He had a crash earlier in the open test earlier in April, has a crash once again. So Kyle Larson, another incident. So we have just seen numerous incidents already. I feel like more than we usually see for practice. Colton Herta had a pretty nasty wreck in qualifying. Able to get that car in. I'm going to talk about that later as well. Great story there. But just all these different wrecks and things that we're seeing, I feel like it's going to be a very chaotic race day, honestly. We're probably going to see quite a few cautions in this race. A lot more, I feel like, than we normally see, just because with all the added weight that we're adding onto this, it just makes things really interesting in terms of the situations that we're going to run into later. I feel like we're going to have a very chaotic event. So last year for qualifying, we had Penske absolutely locking out the front grid. But for qualifying this year, quite a different story, as our front grid for this year, Robert Schwartzman, a rookie in the pole, first time since 1983, absolutely insane for that Prema team to get into pole position. Had a very good run heading into the Fast 6, which I thought was insane. Got himself into the Fast 12, then into the Fast 6, then ran a monster lap for lap number 1 and just maintained that pace just a little bit in that 232 range and got pole position. It was great to see for that team, just absolutely ecstatic over there. But just one of the best stories that you're going to see for this Indy 500 weekend. It's going to be interesting to see if Schwartzman is able to keep up and lap traffic a little bit with that car. It's really fast when it's ahead, but in terms of that lap traffic, it's kind of going to be interesting to see where that stands a little bit as we go through the pit cycle. So I feel like he's going to have a very good start, but how he's going to maintain that throughout the race, I think, is going to be interesting in his first oval start as well. Insane for that as well. A guy who hadn't ran on ovals before, hadn't ran an oval race, coming in off just a few tests and gets pole position over the rest of the field that has tons of experience, 500 wins abound. A rookie comes in and wins the pole. One of the best stories on the weekend. And another great story to talk about as well, Colton Herta, who crashed in his first qualifying attempt Saturday, getting into a backup car. Credit to that team as well. They worked their asses off to get that car back in gear. And Colton Herta went out on a car that he had never used before and went out and smashed it, got into the Indy 500. one of the best drives I think Colton Herta has had, using a car that he's never used before and getting that thing into the Indy 500 is just absolutely insane. So credit to that team as well. Just a lot of great qualifying stories, honestly. Obviously, the drama and the controversy on Sunday was the thing people were going to talk about, obviously, with Team Penske. The number 12 and the number 2 car, Will Power and Joseph Newgarden, those teams were found to have a rear attenuator in the back that was illegal. It was modified, filled in a little bit for aerodynamic purposes. They were disqualified from the Fast 12. It was really weird seeing that on live TV and seeing them work on it. And also cracking up as well, a little side note, seeing Alex Bellow's little smirk as he was just looking at the car of Joseph Newgarden's being worked on, knowing that, like, oh, those guys are fucked. That was honestly hilarious. And just seeing them caught on live television working on it, which was the first infraction, and then the second was realizing that it was a spec piece that was modified, so a piece that you are not allowed to modify was changed and altered. But the number 3 for Scott McLaughlin, that rear attenuator was not modified, so he was not disqualified. Did drop to 12th place in the Fast 12 because of the situation with that practice run crash. Able to keep his position, which I think is interesting. A lot of people were wondering if he had something modified with his car on Saturday, but there was nothing to prove that. Nothing to prove it on Sunday as well, as he passed both tech inspections. So the number 3 car is fine, but the number 12 and the number 2 were kicked out of the top 12. And kicked to the back of the grid as well, as we had a big talk about the integrity of the sport and just how things should go going forward. I think this is going to be a case that goes on for a while, and I want to make another kind of video talking about it a little bit in its entirety. But just real quick going over it, they will be dropped to the back of the grid, 32nd and 33rd. 32nd being Joseph Newgarden, 33rd being Will Power, just because of the results and qualifying. Yeah. I think that in terms of the situation, just going over it real quick, I think that what they did for this right now is the right thing to do. Finding them $100,000. They both would lose their strategists for the race, and they have the worst pit boxes as well for the race. So you're kind of doing everything you can to kind of prohibit them from having a decent day. I mean, they still can have a decent day. They have a really fast car. That difference between them and Arenas VK in the back is like 6 miles an hour or something crazy. So that's going to be interesting to see how those cars handle in the back of the pack, as they're usually towards the front. So it's going to be interesting seeing them in a lot of traffic in the back. So just a crazy situation overall, but going to go over that a little bit later. Kind of want to stay more on the positives of qualifying for this and just heading into the Indy 500 week in general. Going over some of the bump day drama, Jacob Abel not able to make it in, had a battle with Rinus VK towards the end. Marcus Armstrong and Marco Andretti were just fine running a 229, but it was the 2 Dale Coyne cars once again dealing with just issue after issue with that car all week and just struggling. It was just interesting to see if it was going to be a battle between the 2 Dale Coyne cars, and that's what it ended up being for bump day, unfortunately. Dramatic as always. There's not really a winner in this, especially in Rinus VK's sense, and the fact that you had to bump your teammate out of the race. I know people want to make the argument because of the penalties that Jacob Abel should be put in. I don't exactly think that's the right thing to do. The car did not make it in. I think making it in on a technicality like that would just kind of diminish things just a little bit. He himself said that he did not want to make it in off a technicality. It sucks to see. That car was beautiful. Jacob Abel is a young driver who I think will really learn from this. A great example of this is last year with Nolan Siegel, not able to make it in. Pat O'Ward hasn't made it in before and made it in the year after. I mean, so this has happened before to drivers, so it's not to take away from Jacob Abel. I mean, he has a chance to kind of take this as motivation for the rest of the season. Look at what Nolan Siegel did. It hurts. It's got to hurt. It's got to sting. But using this as motivation to build for the future, I feel like is just the only thing you really can do. And then next year, come out guns a-blazing. And last thing in terms of driver predictions for the Indy 500 going into this, I feel like I have my kind of eyes set on 3 people for this race. in terms of who we should be looking at. The first one is Pato O'Ward. I feel like the fan favorite for this race finally got into the front row. This is the best that Pato has looked in a while. I mean, coming second last year, he's been very strong at the Indy 500, but I feel like he looks even stronger this year. That car looks great. I feel like it's going to run well in lap traffic. It's really fast on its own. I feel like if there is any year for Pato O'Ward to win the Indy 500 so far, it is this year. This is the best year for it. You don't have the battle with the Penske's at the front possibly, and all you have to deal with is Takuma Sato on that front row. We'll see how Robert Schwartzman does, and then you have to worry about the Ganassi's behind you in the back a little bit. But other than that, I feel like this is Pato's year. But with a great driver like Pato O'Ward and being really fast, you got some people next to him that are just as fast. Takuma Sato, a two-time winner of the Indy 500 in 2017 and 2020. He's been looking fast as hell in practice all week, and qualifying was great. He's going to take some risks. That's what he is known for. That's why I love Takuma Sato. He is not afraid to put it on the line to try and win this race. He's done it before. So I feel like that is going to be a very good fight for Pato O'Ward. We're probably going to see those two battling for quite a while, which I'm going to love. But right behind him is Alex Palou, who has one of the fastest cars, if not the best car in the entire grid in terms of just overall speed. Palou is looking great. Unfortunately, was not able to qualify well for the pole position, but he is just right behind him, and I feel like he's going to be a big factor, especially later in this race. And you cannot count out Scott Dixon, who I've been looking at all week. Just looks really determined as well, but just kind of right behind Palou a little bit. But you can never count out Scott Dixon. It is someone that's very unpredictable. He can be put in any situation and crawl his way out of it, so never can count out Scott Dixon. So yeah, those are the guys I'm kind of looking at. Pato O'Ward, Takuma Sato, Alex Palou, and Scott Dixon. I think it was going to be one of those four guys to win the Indy 500 this year. I'm just really looking forward to it, man. I love the Indy 500. It is the best race in the entire world. I cannot say that enough. I mean, in my opinion, just the best race in the world, the best racetrack in the world. It's going to be a really fun week heading into it, especially with Carb Day coming up and then all the little events downtown. Going to try and see if I can go out and get some of that stuff if I can. But if not, going to be at the Indy 500 on Sunday in person. Going to try and get some videos from that. Going to have a recap talking about that later. Yeah, I hope you all enjoy. I'd like to know any comments about who you think is going to win the Indy 500 and just thoughts about any of these situations going on. And yeah, I'll see you when we head into the Indy 500.